I ignored the signs of my wife's infidelity for years, but one final incident pushed me over the edge. It was the kind of life that people only dream about. I was Joseph Brooks, a successful architect with a thriving career, and Mia, my wife, was everything anyone could wish for in a partner. We had met in college, and our love story had felt like something out of a romance novel. Mia was beautiful, smart, and had a smile that could light up a room. We complemented each other perfectly. We got married in a small, intimate ceremony, surrounded by friends and family. Our life seemed idyllic. Our marriage was supposed to be the foundation of everything, our future, our happiness. From the outside looking in, we were the perfect couple. I had my dream job, we lived in a gorgeous house on the outskirts of the city, and we took exotic vacations to places most people only saw in magazines. But little did I know, as I basked in the success and comforts of our seemingly perfect life, Mia had begun to change in ways I never expected. The first signs were small, almost too small to notice. I was always caught up in work, striving to take our careers to new heights. I had my eyes on the prize, focused on creating something bigger for both of us. Mia had always been supportive, even encouraged my ambition. But slowly, it felt like I was losing her in the process. She started staying late at work more often. She'd leave the house early, claiming she had an important project she needed to wrap up. At first, I thought it was just her ambition. She had a successful career in marketing, and we both were driven by our goals. But over time, the late nights became more frequent, and the excuses seemed less genuine. I didn't question her. I trusted her. After all, this was Mia, the woman I had fallen in love with. She was my best friend, my confidant, the one person who had been by my side since we were young. The thought that something was wrong never crossed my mind because I believed in the bond we shared. But then the phone calls started. I first noticed the phone calls when she would be in another room, talking in hushed tones. Her voice would drop to a whisper, and when I walked into the room, she'd quickly end the conversation or give me an excuse. I told myself it was nothing, a private conversation with a colleague, perhaps, or maybe a friend who needed her advice. But as time went on, these calls became more frequent. Mia started hiding her phone more, keeping it on silent, facing it down on the table. I told myself I was being paranoid. Surely, I couldn't be suspecting what I thought I was. I was just overthinking. We were happy, right? Then there were the weekends. We used to spend Sundays together, just the two of us, brunch, walks, and quiet time at home. But lately, Mia would say she was meeting friends or working on a project, leaving me to spend my days alone. I didn't protest. She had her own life, and I didn't want to be overbearing. I knew she needed her space, just as I did. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. I tried to fill the emptiness with work. But no matter how much I accomplished, it never seemed to fill the void in my heart. I began to notice how much more she was slipping away. There were no more surprise date nights, no more lingering talks about our future. It felt like the connection we once had was slowly slipping through my fingers, like sand in the wind. But even with all these signs, I couldn't bring myself to ask the hard questions. I was too afraid of the truth. Afraid of losing everything I had worked so hard for. So, I ignored the signs. I convinced myself that things would get better. After all, Mia was the woman I had loved since we were teenagers. Surely, this was just a phase. And then, one evening, everything changed. I had just returned from a business trip, tired and ready to spend the evening with my wife. I walked into the house, expecting to hear the sound of Mia's voice or the smell of dinner cooking. But the house was eerily quiet. I called her name, but there was no response. My heart raced. I noticed her purse was on the kitchen counter, but she wasn't anywhere to be found. I tried texting her, but there was no reply. I felt the knot in my stomach tighten. Something wasn't right. I couldn't explain it, but my instincts were screaming at me. I walked through the house, room by room, checking every corner. And then, I heard it, the sound of muffled laughter coming from the study. I stood frozen at the door, my heart pounding in my chest. Mia was sitting on the couch, her back to me, and there was a man beside her. They were laughing together, too comfortably, too intimately. I couldn't see his face, but I recognized the tone of his voice. He was too familiar. And the way Mia was leaning into him, the way they were so at ease together. It hit me like a ton of bricks. My pulse quickened. I couldn't breathe. I stood there, watching them, unable to move. The man's laughter stopped, and Mia turned her head. She froze when she saw me standing in the doorway, her face pale. The color drained from her face, and I knew instantly that I had seen enough. Mia, I managed to whisper, my voice thick with disbelief. The silence in the room was deafening. Mia stood up, her eyes filled with panic. Joseph, I can explain. I couldn't speak. I just stood there, my heart shattering in front of me. The pieces of my life, the life I had built with her, were falling apart in a matter of seconds. The man, who I now recognized as a colleague of Mia's, stood up as well, his face full of shame. He didn't say anything. He just walked out of the room without looking at me. Mia's gaze followed him, but she didn't stop him. When the door closed behind him, she turned to me, her eyes brimming with tears. Joseph, please listen to me, she pleaded. I never wanted you to find out like this. I never wanted to hurt you. But I've been seeing him for months now. I don't know how to explain it, but I got lost. Somewhere along the way, I lost myself, and in the process, I hurt you. Her words were like daggers, each one driving deeper into my chest. I couldn't process them. How could she say that? How could she betray me like this? Every dream I had built, every plan for the future, came crashing down in that moment. I trusted you, I said, my voice breaking. I gave you everything, Mia. Everything. And this is how you repay me. She fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to happen. I don't know how to fix it. I never stopped loving you, Joseph. But I wasn't honest with myself, and I lost sight of what was important. I stood there, watching her cry, but I couldn't bring myself to feel sorry for her. I had to walk away. I had to save myself from the pain. This wasn't love anymore. This was betrayal. And the worst part? I had ignored the signs for years. I didn't scream. I didn't shout. I just walked out of the room. My mind was a whirlwind of emotions, anger, sadness, confusion, and a strange sense of relief. As I left the house that night, I knew in my heart that it was over. In the following days, I filed for divorce. It was the hardest decision I had ever made. We had spent so many years together. We had dreams, memories, and plans. But those things no longer mattered. The trust had been broken beyond repair. The pain of it all stayed with me, but I knew that I couldn't keep living a lie. I couldn't keep pretending that everything was okay when it wasn't. The hardest part wasn't just walking away from Mia. It was walking away from the person I had become while ignoring the truth. I had lost myself in this marriage, and now, I had to find my way back. The months that followed were the hardest of my life. There were days when I felt like I was suffocating in the sadness, but with each passing day, I began to rebuild. I threw myself into my work, rediscovered old hobbies, and spent time with people who truly cared for me. Slowly, I started to heal. I learned to trust myself again. I learned that sometimes, the most painful decisions are the ones that lead to the most growth. I wasn't the same person who had walked into that house months ago. I had learned the most important lesson of all: to never ignore the signs, to never put someone else's needs above my own well-being. As time passed, I realized that I was stronger than I thought. I had walked away from a toxic relationship, and in doing so, I had rediscovered my worth. Mia's betrayal had broken me, but it had also made me whole again. It was time for me to write my own story, a story that was no longer defined by the shadows of the past. If you've ever been in a situation where you ignored the signs, where you stayed in a relationship that wasn't right for you, know that it's never too late to choose yourself. Sometimes, the hardest decisions lead to the greatest rewards. If you've gone through something similar, share your story with me in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more stories of strength, growth, and healing. Life is full of challenges, but it's how we rise above them that truly defines us. Until next time, take care of yourself. You deserve to be loved, respected, and cherished. Always.